the majority of South Africans are completely excluded from the public sphere. They have no way of voicing their interests. They're largely invisible to the majority of to the people who engage in discourse, and so that can distort our understanding of what are the most pressing problems that South Africa faces today. Do you think that we're still largely trapped in insider debates, or is there a way in which outsiders are able to participate in agenda setting in South African politics or not?
No, I'd put it even stronger than that, and I do in the book. I repeat in the book a couple of times: all South African politics is insider politics, because the outsiders are simply talked about; they're not listened to, and certainly COVID-19 response that was writ large. Okay, in the political party space in South Africa, one of the great, and I mentioned this also in One Virus, Two Countries, one of the great ironies of the ANC is that it's despised by most of the insiders or by most of First World South Africa, because most of First World South Africa thinks that it actually speaks for the Third World, whereas, of course, it doesn't. So to use the insider-outsider, the ANC is assumed to be the party of the outsiders, which it's nothing of the sort. I find it very interesting the way in which the insider-outsider divide runs right through the ANC, because in a nutshell, the group led by the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in fact speaks for the insiders. The other group doesn't speak for the outsiders, but the other group uses the outsiders as an opportunity for rent seeking, so you proclaim that you're in favor of radical economic transformation, which really means, as you implied in your question, within the insider group, more for my group within the insider group, and less for your group within the insider group. It's certainly got nothing to offer anybody who's not an insider. And the EFF is sometimes seen as an outsider group. I mean, just a factoid which I find fascinating. If you, I'm dubious of surveys, but this wasn't a survey of attitudes. It was a survey. On average, EFF voters have higher formal qualifications and higher incomes than ANC voters. And that doesn't surprise me, because the EFF is fundamentally a middle-class party. And really, the EFF is about something which, I mentioned the divisions within the insider group. It's about the fact that, there are significant numbers of Black insiders who feel that they're treated like second-class citizens. And the EFF tries to articulate that. But, it's by no means, just anecdotally, I mean, I'm always struck by the fact that many years ago, when Julius Malema became president of the ANC Youth League, there was some kind of controversy about the fact that he owned 2 houses. And I remember a radio journalist asking him about this. And Malema's response was, I mean, it's kind of engraved on my memory, and I quote it in the book, although I don't attribute it to Malema. He said, like any young South African, I used my first salary check to buy a house. Well, spot the deliberate error. Most young South Africans don't get a first salary check. And if they do, it's certainly not big enough to afford a house. So it just indicated, where the EFF is in this space. And let me illustrate also by a debate we've been having in South Africa for a while now, which seems to have fizzled out, more of which later, and that is the debate about land expropriation without compensation. Now, I would argue very strongly that only one group of South Africans have been entirely excluded from that debate, and that is landless people. Nobody in the debate is vaguely interested in what both sides sort of manipulate landless people. So the pro-expropriation people go out and they get a couple of landless people to the hearings to say that they don't like being landless. And then the other side goes out and speaks to three people who says, no, well, it's not about expropriation, it's about getting the government to do better, etc. But that's, I mean, we all know that's not listening to people, that's manipulating people. And that raises another interesting issue about the way in which South African politics gets distorted. So the question becomes, why is it, seeing that landless people weren't interested in this issue, why is it that you had a groundswell of enthusiasm for expropriating land without compensation, mainly driven by middle-class people, many of whom own property and aren't planning to give it back to the state? And my argument is that, in a sense, it's a reflection of those tensions within the insider group. That because many middle-class Black people feel marginalized by white authority, they support demands which enable them to articulate the idea that they're angry, etc. And that explains something else quite interesting, which is that these campaigns always fizzle out. They always end up in, the chapter in which I deal with it is called The Cycle of Crisis and Compromise, because you create the crisis because you want to draw attention to the fact that you think that you're being marginalized, which you probably are. But then you don't care terribly much about whether they're free university fees or whether there's expropriation without compensation, because that hasn't been what it's been all about. I'm not convinced there's going to be, I don't think they're going to change the Constitution at all, because they can't get a majority to do it, and I don't think there'll be an outcry. I don't think there will be free university education.